Hey, small business people and lovers of good stories in general. Welcome to Small Business War Stories, episode 33. And today we're going to take a quick break from airing the Soul of America tour episodes, which we have been airing every week, to talk with Jonas Koffler. And Jonas is part of a group called the 4-Day Weekend, and it's an improvisational theater troupe in Fort Worth, Texas. And they have a really interesting perspective on how do you use improvisational theater, improv theater techniques in everyday life and in business. And we talk a lot about the philosophy of yes and as opposed to no but, meaning that when something happens, you say, yes and add something to it, and the power that that can have in terms of being effective in everyday business and in relationships with other people. And they are coming out with a great book. And the great book is called Happy Accidents, and that book is out this week. And in that book, they delve a little bit deeper into everything they do, and their philosophy really. They also do a lot of great work with veterans and with people with PTSD, and we'll get into that in the episode as well. This episode is brought to you by Proven. Proven's a company I started. It's a leading small business hiring tool, and we are used by thousands of people nationwide. You want to go post a job just to Proven, and then it'll get distributed directly to hundreds of different job boards, over 100 job boards. And there's a free trial. You can go check it out at www.proven.com. Go try it. It's great. And without further ado, I want to get into the episode with Jonas Koffler of the 4-Day Weekend in episode 33 of Small Business War Stories. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. And we are live here in Austin, Texas, and I am sitting here today with Jonas Koffler of 4-Day Weekend, and you are the Director of Innovation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here on behalf of the guys, the group, and the city of Fort Worth as well.
Awesome. So yeah, you're based out of Austin here, but a lot of the folks are based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right?
Correct. The show is based in downtown Fort Worth at Sundance Square.
Okay.
And we have quite a robust team and a cast of very colorful characters.
Yeah.
But we do work all over the country, all over the continent, and all over the world for that matter.
Cool. So how often are you in Fort Worth?
Well, I personally am there. We have a remote situation, given that I travel a lot on behalf of the company and other ventures that I'm involved with.
Okay.
But I'm there, monthly, and whenever I need to be.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more, and really, I love the idea of using improv for everyday life and strategies for people and maybe our listeners for small businesses. So we'll get into that. But before we get into that, let's chat a little bit about what you guys are as a business. So what would you say you guys do, and what's the history? How did this all get started?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one with a lot of interesting twists and turns and what we call happy accidents.
All right.
And we're going to unpack that a bit more a little later, but essentially 4-Day Weekend Comedy is an entertainment and training company. We were born in February of 1997 after a series of missteps and surprises. What started as a limited 6-week run at a small 99-seat theater called Casa Theater in the Square in downtown Fort Worth has evolved into what is now arguably one of the most successful improvisation and comedy theaters anywhere.
Cool.
For the last 20 years. We grew into our own theater. It's 212 seats. Historic, beautiful downtown Fort Worth, as I said.
Yeah.
We have our own corporate communications division, which includes corporate training for keynotes and workshops. Sure. And we also have a full student training center where we work with students and professionals, as well as a touring company. And we also have our own creative division, which does film and TV and all sorts of other kinds of fun stuff.
Cool, that's a lot. So let's unpack that. So how did what was it? So that's you guys are celebrating 20 years now.
Correct.
That's cool. What? How did this? So how did you start? What was the evolution like from the early days of having an improv troupe to now having training programs? I mean, that's a lot of stuff must have happened in between. How did that all? I mean, some folks are happy to have a theater company and that's what they do. How did you guys make that leap into doing training and things like that?
Well, leap's the key word, Pablo. In improvisation, it's all about the leap, not about the landing. And if you use that as a metaphor for life,
Okay.
for business as well, obviously, we're talking about business in the business world, but I think inherently there is an implicit risk in improvisation. We don't know where we're going. We only know where we've been, right?
Sure.
And that's true in the evolution of our theater company. We started at, small potatoes, literally making pennies.
Cool.
And the guys scraped together every cent they made in the show, and they put it back in, reinvested it in the company. Eventually, they got really good. And when you get to a certain level of competency in something, and especially if you can connect with human beings and make them smile and laugh, and escape from whatever challenges they may be facing outside, whether familial, workplace, or whatever, they seem to like it and resonate. And what happens? Word of mouth. They tell their friends.
Yeah.
So we're a company who has never spent a dime on advertising.
Wow.
Not a dime, not a penny. It's all word of mouth and a lot of happy accidents, meaning surprises or disruptions to the normal routine in which people take notice of us. Well, one of those people who took notice of us was a reporter at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram.
Okay.
And he wrote up a story on us and did a full-page spread. And what happened? It ultimately snowballed into more awareness for us, more interest in us, other reporters getting on board.
Yeah.
That led to, as I said, a much bigger theater show. Our first run in 6 weeks, and then which now has turned into 20 years. We've literally worked with thousands and thousands of companies over the years, Fortune 500 companies in our communications and corporate division, doing creative work. We've worked in films. We've done a lot of commercial work. We've done work in the education space with teachers and students. We're actually right now entrepreneurs in residence at the Neely School of Business, which is one of the top 20 programs nationally in entrepreneurship. So look, we've had a lot of lucky breaks.
Yeah.
But again, it's all about putting ourselves out there and saying yes, yes, and allowing ourselves a space to navigate the opportunity landscape to welcome in these happy accidents, these surprises.
Cool. So let's talk about that a little bit. So I love the philosophy of yes and it's something that I was familiar. I learned about probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's a really cool way to look at things. Let's talk a little bit more about specifically what that is. And it seems like that philosophy of yes and is what permeates everything that you guys do, from the performance side to the training side. So what is yes and?
Yes and is a simple philosophy wherein we strike the word no from our vocabulary and replace it with yes and.
Okay.
Well, on its surface, that seems really simple, doesn't it? But on a kind of a deeper, even spiritual level, what yes and does is allow us to open up our minds and our hearts to opportunity in new ways. It means that what we do is we listen actively.
Okay.
We are open to everyone's ideas.
Okay.
And literally what it means is that there are no bad ideas. So when you're in a group, if you're a business owner, if you're listening to other employees, other stakeholders, you want to be receptive to their ideas and recognize that there are no wrong choices, only higher and lower percentage ones, right? So no wrong ideas, only higher and lower percentage ones. So let me give you an example of that.
Let's talk. That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Let's actually make it rubber meets the road. Let's talk about application of this.
Sure. So a couple of them. So if you're a business owner and you're starting a food truck, let's say.
Yep.
Well, instead of spending a ton of money developing some kind of gourmet dish and going out to the middle of the desert where no one is and setting up shop and serving it, that would be a very low percentage choice, right?
Okay.
You might serve a dish to a passerby or something, or put out some scraps for a javelina, but you're probably not going to blow up in your business. It's not going to go very well.
Okay.
But instead, if you get out there and start asking questions to people, what are you interested in? What kind of food would maybe meet your fancy? What would whet your appetite, your palate? And you get some feedback and you say, you know what, I'm going to run a little experiment here. I'm going to start this little food truck in a very high density populated area where there probably are no other food trucks, hopefully.
Yeah.
You have a much higher percentage choice of success.
Okay.
Right? So it's like you're making choices that orient you to.
So let me ask you a question.
Sure.
So what happens if you actually do think it's a bad idea? So let's say, for example, that right now in the middle of the podcast here, I suggest that it's a little chilly. The AC is really blasting, so we should light this chair on fire. What next to me right here? How do you yes and that?
No, it's not 100% hard and fast rule that everything deserves a yes and.
Yeah. Okay.
In that case, you would apply what we call a considerate or reflective no.
Okay.
So the no there would be, well, that's an interesting idea, Pablo. And perhaps given the right situation where you're not putting other people at risk, namely me and yourself and everyone else in this building, it might be better to light it on fire out in the field where there's nothing else to catch on fire and we can just observe the effects. So we're going to say no in that case, and we'll discuss it creatively and hopefully work toward a solution.
Maybe get a space heater or lower the AC.
Turn it off. There you go.
All right, cool. So let's talk about like in the performance side when you guys are doing your improv performances. So I've watched probably about 50 or 60 improv performances in my life, and like it's definitely a theme. But what happens behind the scenes? So for somebody who comes and watches an improv show, you kind of see this, like a pretty typical setup. I mean, there's like the storytelling formats and all that, and the herald and all that, but that's like more advanced stuff, right? So at the base level, you basically get the audience to say, "Hey, somebody says monkey," and then from then on, you create a story. What's happening behind the scenes? What are you guys thinking about? What are the kind of tools that you have when you're doing this show?
Well, there are a number of tools, but the mindset, again, fundamentally is oriented around this idea of yes and. Why is that? Because the shows are unscripted. There are some set pieces that provide some degree of structure. Act 1 and Act 2, let's say. But we're open to getting feedback from the audience. We ask for their contributions in the form of ideas or words that they all write before the show begins. And we use that to develop scenes. But as I said, in improvisation, everything's unscripted. We don't have the luxury of saying no. Why? Because no stops progress. So instead, we yes and each other, and we recognize that no one is more important than anyone else. We're all working together in a group, and we're building the show as we go. So if you say something, we're responding to you and building upon that. And that is what allows us to evolve and develop scenes, and hopefully they come to some kind of happy or funny ending, and we find surprises along the way. That's how these things are structured. So in terms of the thinking, it's more about listening actively. Right? Because you don't know where you're going. You only know where you've been. Everything is new. You're co-creating the entire time.
You're right.
So we're listening to cues that we're provided, much in the same way I'm responding to your questions right now. And I'm trying to build on that, and you're going to then build on that, and it's the same idea.
It makes sense. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about the book. So you guys have a book called Happy Accidents coming out. And tell me more about that, and also what the philosophy, and I'm sure there's some stories there you want to share about. You mentioned before we started that there had been some happy accidents and how this all came together, right?
Yeah, so the book is called Happy Accidents. We did it with John Wiley and Sons, and it'll be releasing here in the U.S. in September and globally as well. And the subtitle is The Transformative Power of Yes and at Work and in Life. And in the book, we map our journey and share stories and practical tips about the power of yes and, how it applied in our journey, and how other people can apply it. If you're small business owners, if you run a large enterprise company, if you're a teacher, if you're having relational issues, it's some of the same improvisational tools. So it's line building, listening, play, again, recognizing that there are no bad ideas, only higher and lower percentage choices. And really finding ways to empower other people to apply yes and thinking. And we think that yes and thinking is an expression of human imagination. And if people can harness the tools of human imagination, really it's about making the impossible possible. It's a mindset shift, and there's an action layer too. There's another aspect of it that I think is very important, especially in days and times when people feel beaten down or trapped or stuck. Improvisation is sort of like a Jedi's tool. It's a way of using this energy within us and harnessing this way of being that is very positive, impactful, and supportive of other people. So there's an empathy component to it. And we find it's very liberating because you're fundamentally more present in the moment. You can't ignore it, you can't drift off. But when you really tune in and you start listening actively, and you're, instead of sort of ignoring what other people say and staying in your own box, you're opening up to what other people can give you. And you're, in turn, providing support to them as well. So it's a very, very
what are some examples? So again, I want to make it really relatable and understandable for people, because I'm familiar with the idea of yes and I've seen it in action in a play, and I've kind of tried to apply it to my own life. But you were talking about how people who are teachers or all walks of life can use this. So do you guys work with examples in the book of things ways to do this?
Absolutely. So it's chock full of examples, and a few we can share on.
Yeah.
So there's this concept called ROI, and in the business world, what is that? It's a return on investment, right? Well, in the improvisation world, we tweak that a little bit. We call it the return on improvisation. Why is that? When you remove that no but thinking, so that when you're no butting, if you're sort of at the top of the chain and you're knowing everything because you know what's best for your company, you're not allowing the unknown, the pivots into innovation to occur.
Yeah.
Right? So if you think about maybe lean startup methodology or things of that nature.
Sure.
If everything is no and you're not running any experiments, you're not taking any risks, there's no possibility for growth.
Yeah.
All of the potential, I would argue, either meeting customer demands or trying new things and bringing in new ideas into business are based upon this idea of being open. So ROI is all about trying new things, being open to everyone's ideas, giving them equal merit, and then making some decisions based on what you think is the best path as a group, collaboratively.
Okay.
So it's the same philosophy as we use in the theater that we use in our business. And what we would encourage people to do and our readers to do is to be open to collaborating in new ways, focusing on the unknown, that potential that they can start mapping and navigating around.
Sure.
And they're going to discover not only what their team's really good at and really enjoys, but new ways to grow the company.
Okay. Interesting. So there's a couple of things that come to mind when you say that. One of them is a lot of folks that start small businesses are by nature kind of they think they know what's right. I certainly did when I started my company, and I got slapped around by reality quite a bit. And so that's one thing. For a lot of people, it may be difficult sometimes to I know, people may have in their head, I know what's best. Why do this kind of thing? And then the other thing too is the most precious resource for a small business and for any business in general really is time and focus. So how do you combine the idea of yes and with maintaining your focus, and what's the process of giving the ideas equal merit and then actually not be paralyzed by this consideration and trying of everything because you have to do something, right?
Absolutely. And we're not suggesting you don't do anything. I mean, I think a big component or tenet of improvisation is adaptability.
Okay.
And as you said, you probably started with your own premise. We certainly did in our business. We were a comedy, theater company, right? But if you open up to adapting and listening, right? You're listening to feedback because that validates what you're doing and generally will allow you to persevere or pivot, right? As a small business owner, you need to be willing at times. You're staying the course, but you're giving up some degree of control or freedom in the spirit of discovering new ways of growing the business. Yeah. And so for us, it was knowing that when we got approached after a show by a member of a company saying, hey, we'd love to apply some of the work you do at our company, or we'd love for you to host an event, instead of saying, no, we can't do that, we're only a theater company, say, yes, and because we're going to do that, we're going to start growing a new division of our company. And so what happened? Okay. These are the things that allowed us. So it's listening to that feedback actively, saying yes and being open to it, and figuring out what would be a low-cost, low-risk choice to move forward.
Cool. So it sounds like at that point it was the right substrate and the right time for you guys to do that. But I have encountered in my own business experience, and I met many people who have what I call a shiny penny problem. Have you heard about this before?
Tell me more.
So shiny penny means that you're focused and walking forward on something that makes sense for your business, that's growing, that's doing well. But as you know, succeeding takes a lot of boring shit and dedication that you have to do every single day and repetition of things, right? The sexy part is starting in the beginning, and then obviously the execution can get pretty tedious at times, but that's what makes you successful ultimately. But then you look to the side and there's a shiny penny like, a new product line, or a new store, a new market, and you may or may not be ready for that. So how do you kind of think about this yes and philosophy and taking advantage of opportunities while also keeping that focus and making sure that you're not constantly chasing a new thing?
Right. So again, our core focus is, one of our lines of business is the theater company itself. Yeah. So we're doing 4 shows a week, 2 shows on Fridays and 2 shows on Saturdays in a packed theater of 212 people. Mm-hmm. We have a bar. That's our core business, right? That allows us, one, to sort of cement our anchor, our root business. And we can take these little risks, knowing that we've got a very solid foundation. Yeah. And with that, we have the confidence And we also have 20 years of experience and knowing that we've done 6,000 live shows.
Yeah.
Not only in Fort Worth, but we've done USO tours. We've worked with the who's who of Fortune 500 companies. And these are our friends and business partners at this point, right?
Sure.
So again, you've got to find the confidence first in that core competency and foundation that you can then build upon. I mean, if you're just starting out, we wouldn't have taken, weren't ready to take those risks.
So that's what I was going to say. You had to build a certain...
Absolutely.
So your yes and... So if somebody had approached you with this idea 6 months in, how would you have yes and that?
Yes, we would have thanked them for the suggestion, and we would have discussed it behind the scenes and during the week in between shows.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's what happened for a long time. And it took one of us having the confidence to say, we should probably start incorporating or should look into it, or we should just try this and see how it goes.
Yeah.
You're not throwing all your eggs into one basket. You're slowly starting to build other baskets.
But you had already had a good amount of success in the core business to where you felt that confidence that you could do
We
that.
had more than 1,000 shows. 2,000 shows under our belt.
So there you go. That's the part that I want to make sure we get to, is that it takes a lot of focus to get to success. And nobody has ever succeeded by starting 6 things at the same time, but there's many examples of people succeeding in one thing and adding things later, right?
Well, absolutely, I agree with that, and let me give that a little more color.
Yeah.
As I said, the group dynamic is the essence of improvisation.
Okay.
So it's not about what I say; it's about what we say as a group. It's moving from what we call from ego to we go.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
From ego to we go, and we talk about this at length in the book, and we have some exercises around this. I think small business owners, especially entrepreneurs in general, are some of the most disillusioned people in the world, and that's good. We need that disillusionment, and we gain our confidence when we surround ourselves with like-minded people, what we call happy, friendly people that we know, like, and trust, and have a shared experience with. Right?
Yeah.
Happy, friendly people that we know, like, and trust, have a shared experience with. We're building that shared experience together. When you have that support, the strength in numbers, right? The power of we. You can send an emissary, if you will, an ambassador to represent the company and to run these small experiments in innovation and trying to grow the company in new ways.
Sure.
And come back with feedback, right? So you're not doing it alone. We're not a sole entrepreneurship business. We've got a big team of partners, a big cast behind us, and so forth.
Cool.
That allows us that flexibility, that adaptability, right?
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I like that. What are some examples of the happy accidents that brought you guys together?
Well, there are a number of them.
Yeah.
We come from a background. The guys primarily in stand-up comedy.
Okay.
And stand-up comedy is very different from improvisation. In stand-up comedy, you're getting people who are essentially ranting or tearing the world apart,
right,
with all of its problems and making light of the fact that there are a lot of wrongs in the universe.
And they're written jokes as opposed to improvised lines, right? That's a big difference.
That's correct. It's a set show.
Yeah.
Right? Everything is known.
Yeah.
As opposed to improvisation, which is all about the unknown. Again, it's totally unscripted.
It's really funny. I know both stand-up comedians and improv people, and both groups think that what the other one does is the hardest thing ever.
Well, the truth is they're both incredibly hard, right? Making people laugh is a hard thing to do. But again, I mean, the subtle difference is, or a big difference, depending on how you see it, is one is overtly negative, right?
Interesting.
Shrill at times. The other is overtly positive and about constructing a human experience that is positive. And you can still make light on either side. And I'm not saying one is wrong or right or better than the other. They're just very different.
I've never thought of it. It's true that a lot of stand-up comics tend to be more on the sarcastic, negative side.
Exactly. And there's a place for that, right?
Yeah.
In the human experience.
It definitely makes people laugh. So.
Yeah. And I think what brought us together is, one is a shared passion and love for comedy.
Yeah.
Two, some of us having a stand-up background, David Ahern and David Wilk. And then Troy Grant and Frank Ford brought more of the improvisational philosophy. And Frank, in fact, it's interesting, he was a product engineer at Texas Instruments.
Okay.
He loved acting, was a performer, a really brilliant guy, and he found his way to Second City in Chicago.
Yeah, in Chicago. I've been there.
Yeah. And so, Second City is where this originated.
In Old Town.
Yeah. And, between the two of us, we both had the sort of the longest running shows. They've been around a little longer than we have.
Okay.
We give credit where credit is due, and certainly they influenced our life and our work, or life's work for that matter.
Sure.
And desire to have a positive impact in the world and make people experience joy.
Yeah.
But Frank went up there first. He's sort of the pioneer. Wilk followed suit. Troy and Ahern got on board. The happy accident that brought us together was the desire to do something interesting and constructive together. And to be able to pay for, having light in the office and other things that are important.
Sure.
But also seeing the potential and believing in the
So there was
potential.
a group that went to Second City and then came back to Fort Worth to start this, kind of splinter off of that?
Yeah, as individuals, and then came back and
Okay.
were in discussion. And it was, again, building the confidence to work together.
Okay.
Right?
Cool.
That was the main thing. And I think this is another important point that many of us overlook. In our world, in improvisation, we treat each other as artists and poets, right?
Okay.
We have a deep-seated empathy, ability to hear each other out and to laugh and have fun together and support each other.
Yeah.
And I think that strength in the group element, the group dynamic again,
Yeah.
Can't be overlooked, because that's what has empowered us and supported us along our journey from day one.
Yeah, I think a lot of artists have that. Musicians certainly have that, where you have an empathy for other people. It takes guts to put it out there, and to get. It's pretty easy to criticize other people. It's much harder to go and create.
Well, it's also hard to perform for one person.
Right.
Or 5 people in the theater, and to keep going and be persistent about it.
Yeah.
You talk about that, building that core competency.
Yeah.
You have to sit through a lot of nights where you might have a theater that's packed on day one, as 4-Day did, and then a week later we have 3 people in the audience.
Yeah, within the last couple of weeks, I played a show for, I one place had 50 people and the other place had 5. So yeah, and you have to play the show for 5 people the same way you would play for 50 or 500, right? That's the key.
You are there for them.
Right.
You are performing for them. So when you're in business, you are there for your customer.
Yeah.
And we've always seen it that way, and we are dedicated to the idea of giving everyone a memorable experience.
Yeah.
Why is that? 1, because it gives them a sense of joy, and 2, because they're going to tell their friends.
Yeah. No, it's cool. Actually, I've proven the company I run, we really focus on small businesses and really care about them and try to help them and try to be more than like a faceless software company, So that's a big thing for us too. Cool. You guys have done a lot of work with mental health and with veterans. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I think that's something that's really important. I'm a part of the jiu-jitsu community in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. There's a lot of focus and work on people with PTSD. A lot of jiu-jitsu can be really powerful for that. What are the things that you guys are doing on that front?
Yeah, so a number of things, and it's veterans, but it's also anyone who's sort of vulnerable. A lot of people who have mental health issues these days. And
Sure.
We're talking about numbers as high as 1 in 4, sometimes 2 in 4, depending on your locality. Well, with veterans in particular, folks who suffer from PTSD, and folks who are transitioning out of active duty into civilian life, professional life, we have a program called From Yes, Sir to Yes And. In the military.
Cool.
The chain of command is it's very strict, and it works for a reason, and it has to be followed. In the outside world, civilian life, there's more of an adaptability component that improvisation offers to veterans. So there's that component. The other side of it is mindset, and the other side of it is giving people the tools to communicate and listen, and to develop a sense of understanding and empathy. And veterans who have been exposed to some horrific situations and very, very high stress need these tools. And so, we've done USO tour overseas, multiple bases all over Europe and the Balkans. And we continue working with vets in the local community and nationwide as well. So that's one component of what we do. We were also involved in a venture that I started called the Mental Wellness Summit.
Okay.
The Mental Wellness Summit is a global summit. We have subscribers on 4 continents and over 150,000 people at this point. And it's for people who are dealing with depression and anxiety and other sorts of challenges, addiction and so forth. We see improvisation again as a tool for being more present, for listening, developing a deeper sense of empathy. And again, it's the same tools that apply. It's yes and being adaptable and finding supportive other folks that you can work with and help build a better life for yourself and build a better way of looking at the world.
And kind of building the skill of getting onto the other person, right? Being less in your own head. Like a lot of the things we're talking about, so improv and music and martial arts all have the common element that it's impossible to be in your own head. When you're doing it, it's impossible to check your phone because you have to be focused on doing that, right?
Well, again, it's back to this concept of from me go to we go, right? And what I found, I don't know about you in your ventures, when you get out of your own head and start listening to people and see the world with new eyes, there's something very liberating about that. It gives you a new perspective, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, we are trapped in our own heads, especially when we're stuck behind a screen of electrons for 12 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
You want to be interacting with people because ultimately you're in the people business. I don't care what you do. We know that at a deep and get it at a deep level.
Yeah.
And we're trying to convey an experience to people and have them have some kind of emotional response to it.
That's
right?
awesome.
And that's very important. And I think that the more we shut ourselves off from that experience, the more we deprive ourselves of having some kind of meaningful impact in someone else's life.
Cool. What's the response that you get from veterans? So I have a lot of friends who have served, and I would say there's a broad array that I've seen of, what's the right way to put it? I guess willingness to open up about the difficulties of it. So some are very willing to open up about it, and some are more closed off, because generally, almost by definition, to be successful in the military, I think you have to, kind of shut some of that out, because that's the only way you can continue to function as a human being in these really difficult conditions, being at war. So what's the response that you see from people? Like, and I mean, I'm sure you see a range as well, right?
Well, again, healing is a process, and improvisation is simply one tool of many, many healing modalities that veterans can apply. What we've gotten is that this heightened sense of awareness, being more present, being in the group element. Sebastian Younger is a friend of mine. He writes this about this in Tribe at length.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with him.
Sebastian Younger wrote a book called Tribe.
Okay.
He was a wartime journalist.
Okay.
He just did a new film. He did Restrepo, which you probably have seen.
Sure.
And he also did a new film called The Rise of ISIS, Hell on Earth.
Okay.
Which I just saw at Tribeca, actually. A fantastic film.
I've heard about it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, highly recommended. I believe Nat Geo was the distributor.
Sure.
But anyway, the premise is, look, we evolved as people operating in these small communities of people, 40 to 80 people, something like that. We came out of the caves and we worked together in groups, and we figured out that some of us had certain strengths and others had other strengths. Same thing is true in an improv troupe, right? I'm only as good as you're as good as someone else is good as so forth, and we build it as a team. Well, in the military and veterans coming out of a battle who are looking for trust in other people, and again, that shared experience, they've had many of them have had a very rough go, and have seen their friends die, and as I said, dealt with some really challenging situations. Well, that transition into the real world, this world, the civilian world, is one that requires, again, that sense of trust and empathy, listening, getting out of your own mind, and being able to empathize with other people.
And also having a sense of belonging with other people, right? Because I think one of the big things, probably the number one thing I hear from friends of mine who have served, is that they miss the camaraderie. Like, there's nothing that they encounter in the world here that is similar to going down range with arm in arm with your teammates.
Yeah, so we know based on whatever data set you're looking at, but one of them we've looked at, one of the strongest determinants of your sense of happiness and fulfillment is that sense of belonging, is that sense of community.
Sure.
Improvisational troupes inherently have that community element, that belonging element. We trust each other. We can look at each other for support. When you're out in the world and you're feeling isolated, it's only going to accelerate that experience of trauma, of being alone in the world.
How can people apply that to their business? So how do you take that idea and then help people in your company, in your business, have a sense of belonging such that they're happier to be there?
Again, the foundation here is recognizing that there are no bad ideas. So it's actively listening to solicit or elicit responses from your team.
Okay.
Giving people equal weighting as a premise for running a company. You're all in this thing together. And recognizing that there are no bad ideas, only higher and lower percentage choices, right?
Yeah.
So that openness is a big piece of it. It's not no butting everyone. It's instead saying yes and when appropriate.
Sure.
And if necessary, a reflective or considerate no.
Okay.
And that's a way to engender the sense of community, belonging, trust, shared experience, treating each other with, as artists and poets, with respect and dignity, being open to it, and creating that joyful shared experience together.
Yeah. One of my mentors actually just put out on Twitter the other day that we underestimate the amount of times that people just want to be heard instead of having a solution to their problem. It's actually pretty wild, like how important that can be.
Absolutely. And I would argue, if improvisation is fundamentally about listening to each other, because you're building, that's how you construct the experience that's shared, when we're, again, especially now, so much of our communication is not facilitated interactively. Me looking into your eyes, you're looking into my eyes, we're listening to each other, we're nodding, we're affirming what each other is saying, we're giving each other feedback.
Sure.
If it's done online, we lose that human interaction component, that connectivity, that real connectivity, not electronic connectivity.
Yeah, that's why I do it. That's why I do the podcast 100% in person. So I get pitched a lot for people to be guests on the show, and they're like, "Oh, we'll just do it on Skype and do it on this." And I say no thanks, because it's I feel like a lot of the power of the show is this,
Well, it's these quirks that are happening as well. It's the little signals that we send each other.
Yeah,
that's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Like, I can see into the soul of this Pablo guy, and I get it. He's an interesting cat, and he's doing some interesting work. And I think that, if we're to have impact, what we're trying to do is to encourage more people to listen to each other and look each other in the eyes and say, you know what, we're having a shared experience right now.
Sure.
And you know what? It's also really interesting. We're improvising as we go.
We are 100%. Along those lines, what are some of I'm sure you've seen some really wacky, odd things happen, whether it be it in trainings or on stage. What are some crazy stories you can think of?
Oh, man, there's so many. We can talk about the live theater experience.
Sure, however you want to read that.
Well, we've had angry guests who get a little too drunk and confront.
What happened?
Well, they can interrupt the show. They can confront us in the middle, and that's part of the improvisational experience. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, look out. In this case, we had to have a gentleman escorted away from.
What did he say? Like what?
Different situations, but we invite the audience to participate in the show.
Sure.
And in one case, we had his lady come on the show and participate, and he didn't like that very much. And there was another situation where one of the jokes was misinterpreted by the audience, and that caused some derision and discomfort. But on the whole, that's 0.5% of what the positive experience would be.
Yeah.
We've had so many incredibly life-changing experiences, and I'll qualify that. Experiences where people bring their first date to a show. And we've heard hundreds and hundreds of examples.
Yeah.
That was the most significant thing that not only cemented their sense of being together, but led them to developing a deeper relationship and getting married.
Interesting.
And so there is a romantic component to
our listeners, if you are interested in a long-term relationship, take your first date to an improv show.
There you go.
Love it, man. So tell me about a time. You guys have been around for a long time, and as a matter of existing, things sometimes don't go well in a business. So tell me about a time when things didn't go well, and what did you guys do about it?
Sure. So a good example of when things didn't go well was when our show was disintegrating because of our own egos getting in the way.
Okay.
And we had lost touch.
You guys are like Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, to some degree. So, they're among the three, Dave Ahern and Dave Wilk and Frank Ford, three of the founding partners, were not seeing eye to eye on things. Dave was in the midst of writing a film, I believe Get Lost was it, and he had Harvey Keitel affiliated with it and was raising funds, and he was all about himself, and Frank and Wilk had their own project, a TV show, and they went out to LA and they signed with, I believe it was UTA, United Talent, or APA rather, and went on to sell their show.
Okay.
I believe it was to Fox. And that created even more friction because two of the guys that sold the show, and one was still working on a film, and they weren't seeing eye to eye, and one team's stuff was better than the others, and literally there was a point where the whole thing could have gone to hell. And this is after thousands of shows under their belt.
When did this happen? What year?
This was in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Right?
So 10 years.
It's been about 10 years.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, roughly 10 years ago. And went out to LA, sold the show, came back, had a come to Jesus moment, and said, decided this is a brotherhood. This is the shared experience that we need to continue building.
Yeah.
And the reality is that, I don't know how much time you spent in Los Angeles, but
I went to college there.
Well, there you go. So Hollywood can eat you up. And when you have other handlers involved and agents and there's nothing wrong with it. That's just that world, that showbiz world.
Yeah.
Where it's very intense and very ego-driven, and it's not about the team or group element at all.
Yeah.
It's really the opposite of that. And that's not what improv is about. And our
Right.
roots and our hearts and our minds are in improv. We treat each other as artists and poets. We're happy, friendly people who know and like each other and trust each other and want to build a shared experience. And so for us to get away from that was very painful. But coming back, we recognized that none of us was as good as all of us.
So what was the catalyst for that? Because I think what I'm hearing is like, maybe like there was some more ego-driven quests. Then what was the catalyst to turn it from the, like, in using your words, the ego to the we-go? Like what was the, is it simply like them waking up one day? I mean, there must have been something that was a catalyst for them to come together.
The catalyst, I think, was that they understood that they could do more great work together than going it alone. And they also recognized that, and you know this as a business owner, when you've put your life essence and all of that creative energy and intellectual power into building something, it's very hard to walk away from that. And in fact, that is a representation, a reflection of who you are in the world, your identity. And that identity was core to the essence of 4-Day Weekend for each of our partners. And they wanted to continue building on it and build anew. And I think simply what it was a reset or an inflection point where they came together at a meal and said, we're in this together. And we're going to continue doing this thing.
So, and they've continued to be successful after that.
Oh, it's only been, look, again, winning the key to the city of Fort Worth, being named Small Business of the Year in Fort Worth.
Awesome.
Being named Entrepreneurs in Residence at Neely School of Business. Being, having done shows for Congress, for multiple Fortune 500 companies, for 2 sitting presidents, President Barack Obama, President Bush, doing the USO tour. We're getting all sorts of validation. And for us, the sky's the limit. As I said, it's only what our imagination will allow us to do.
Perfect seg. I was going to ask you next. What do the next 10 years look like?
Well, again, we don't know where we're going. We only know where we've been. So we're open to many, many ideas. Again, lower and higher percentage choices. We're currently developing a program with the Texas Christian University Neely School of Business for certification and training. We're also working on, as I said, the Yes Sir to Yes And program for veterans. We have our online team and our creative division as well, working on various video projects. And the whole innovation component is with our book Happy Accents. We see that as being or leading to one of many other opportunities for us to continue growing the business. One of which is we had our core theater and have had our core theater and will have our core theater, our home in Fort Worth. We're opening up a new satellite theater as well in Dallas-Fort Worth. And I anticipate us scaling, so we'll probably grow a few more theaters in the region, if not nationally.
Wow. How many people are currently involved with 4-Day Weekend?
So we're under 20 people as a small business right now, which is a good number. Who knows? If we continue on our growth trajectory, which I imagine we will, we could double in the next few years.
Wow, that's awesome. Where can people find your business? So what are your website, and the name of your book again is Happy Accidents, and that's going to be coming out in September?
Correct. So first week of September, Happy Accidents is the book.
And I'm sure you can find it in all the usual online outlets.
All the online and retail bookstore outlets, your local bookstore as well. Again, you can find much more information about 4-Day Weekend at 4dayweekend.com.
You guys are active on social media, Instagram, Facebook?
We are quite active. You can join our Facebook, like our page if you like. There are many, thousands and thousands of other people have done that. We're active on Twitter as well and on Instagram as well. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today, Jonas. It's been awesome to learn about your company and your philosophy. Thank you, bud. Take care. It's been a lot of fun. All right. Thank you for listening to Small Business War Stories. If you enjoy the show, share it with a friend, or you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our blog at blog.proven.com. If you have an idea for us, we'd love to hear it. Please email us at podcast@proven.com. See you next time. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.